Welcome to Jackie's Literary Corner. I am Jackie, and I feel like I should be wearing autumnal colors, but I'm lazy and don't feel like getting up and changing my clothes just to film a video. So and it's warm in my room because unfortunately here in North Carolina, it's like in the 70s and 80s, which I'm still bitter about. That it doesn't finally cool down until the end of October. But I'm dealing by trying to get inspired and get in the mood for the autumnal season. I've already started trying the autumnal drinks twice. I've gotten the apple crisp cold drink at Starbucks because we have Starbucks where I work. Technically we have two because we have one in the store and then there was one in that shopping center that was built last year. And then my mom was suggested I download the app so I can get like the discounts and stuff like that and get the points. That's, I use it a lot. You can go to Starbucks, not a lot, but, quite a bit. So I'm gonna, I might use it tomorrow because I am working tomorrow. So, anyway, I wanted to do a video where I talk about autumnal books that I've read that I would like to recommend to you guys, which is surprising, which is actually smaller than my summer recommendations list. So, and I also think I'm going to do a video where I talk about the books I want to read in autumn. Like, when I did the summer video, it was a mixture of books that I want to read for summer that I haven't read yet, but there were also a couple of summer, there were also, I think, books on there that I had read that I think are great for summer. But these are, right now, this video is about the ones that I have read that I think are perfect for autumn, and then I'm going to do a separate video, like I said, that are books that I want to read for autumn time. Okay, so let's go. First, we have The Historian by Elizabeth Kostova. And this kind of goes along with the theme of quite a few books that are about this subject matter. But this is the story of our main character, who we do not know her name. She is a historian. Her father was also a historian. And she found a book in her father's library that had a dragon on it. And she learns from her father that his own mentor had found out and encountered Dracula. And to this day, he might still be alive. So her father tells the story of how he investigated and followed in his mentor's footsteps and eventually met the woman who was the mother of our narrator, our main character. But she has disappeared from our main character's life. She doesn't know if she's alive or dead. And her father eventually disappears and claiming he's going to find our main character's mother. So she goes in search for him. So this is a bit of a dark academia book. And it's historical, there's a little bit of history, like mostly modern history, like 70s, I think is the time frame. Or 70s or 40s or something, I don't remember. But it has a little bit of supernatural element to it with the idea of Dracula and Dracula being real. Now, it's debatable if vampire fans will love this or not, because it's not filled with a lot of vampire action, but there is an unsettlingness to the story and the possibility of them being stalked by a vampire that is one of Dracula's minions. There's a little bit of romance. It's a story within a story kind of formula. It's atmospheric and creepy at times, and like there's lots of history. There's traveling, Eastern Europe traveling, which I think is really cool and fun. So even though it might not have as much a lot of vampire action, the history stuff and traveling throughout Eastern Europe and reading about the possibility of Dracula being real is just so much fun. And I love her Elizabeth Kostova's writing. I have another one of her books that I recently bought. It's just cozy, atmospheric, and I think it's perfect for this time of year. And I think I read this last September as well. And I almost want to pick it up again. But here's the problem. I'm currently, my only problem right now is that I'm trying to, find balance with my reading because I just got a Kindle. So I'm trying to read some. I have Kindle Unlimited. I don't know if I'm going to keep it or not. I might cancel it after the 3 months. So I'm trying to read a book off the Kindle Unlimited, which is really long. And then I'm also reading a book by Dostoevsky, The Idiot. And so it's like those books are taking me a lot longer than anticipated. But so yeah, I mean, like now would be the worst time to start going to the library again. I have thought about going around this time of year since but and then so it's hard to figure out, and then October is they're just trying to find a balance between what I want to read, because I love participating in October, and I don't want to stop participating in October, but it's kind of balancing creepy books with Victorian books. But yeah, anyway, so The Historian by Elizabeth Kostova is my first recommendation. And then I'm going to put it over here instead. Then we have If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio. So this has often been compared to The Secret History, which I'm going to talk about in a minute after I talk about this one. So this is a bit of a murder mystery. So our main Oliver Marks was in prison for murdering one of his friends, but the cop that arrested him, that put him in jail, is starting to have suspicions that maybe Oliver is not guilty. So on the day when he's due to be set free on parole, the cop decides to talk to him and get the full story that Oliver would have told him, the detective. And so we have Oliver and his group of friends. They are college students, and they are obsessed with Shakespeare. They live and breathe Shakespeare. Their lives mirror Shakespeare, the Shakespeare characters. And they also have a very complicated, entangled relationship with each other. There's LGBTQ rep in this book. And it's the idea of if it wasn't Oliver, who killed one of their friends? It's, again, I can't think of a better word, but atmospheric, a little unsettling in the fact that it takes place at a school, at a college specifically, and they're talking about Shakespeare. I think if you love Shakespeare, or at least enjoy Shakespeare, and are familiar with Shakespeare's plays, I think you will appreciate this story. The format of it is really cool in that it's kind of, instead of chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter, etc., it actually have scene 1, scene 2, scene 3, but it's still written like prose. I mean, I thought it was written like a script, but it's actually still written in prose, just as, scene instead of chapter, for the titles, and it's just so, it's unsettling, there's a mystery of who done it, and this is a very dysfunctional group, and if you have read Secret History, but, you might enjoy this one too, and it is shorter, so if you're looking for, if you haven't read either one of them, but you want to start with you could always start with the shorter work, because it's still chunky, but it's not as long as The Secret History. And I think some people prefer, might even like this one better. I liked both of them personally. But now, I do wish I had gotten the hardcover, because I liked the cover of the skull, like in Hamlet. But this is I like the laurel leaves, these flowers, I think these are a reference to Julius Caesar. These little white flowers, but, it's very dark academia. So that's If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio. So then we have, let me go ahead and talk about The Secret History by Donna Tartt. So this one has a very similar story to If We Were Villains, except the students are obsessed with Greek, with Greek literature, Greek writing, and our main character is Richard. He is a new student from California who's arrived at this New England school, New Hampshire, and they end up murdering someone. Ends up murdering one of their own, and I think you got an idea of who did it. So it's more about dealing with it and the fact that Richard knows who did it, but it's like that person feels no remorse, or maybe doesn't remember doing it, and it's kind of him struggling with this, and not and having a guilty conscience, even if he's not the one who actually did it. Actually, it might have been an accident. It's been a while since I read this. I did start rereading, and I haven't picked it up since, but it's just, again, unsettling atmosphere, an academic setting. It's kind of unnerving, and I personally just love reading about pretentious kids. They're very entertaining and amusing. I mean, I wouldn't want to have to deal with them all the time. I would be rolling my eyes a lot with them probably, but with their snobbiness, but then at the same time, it's fun to read about them. It's just kind of like those people who love reality TV shows about rich people, like, The Real Housewives or The Kardashians. You're just so fascinated by these people and the way they think and live their lives and how crazily they spend their money, and you're just, it's so fascinating, and it's often a train wreck that's really just, you can't look away. But I love the writing. It's like, when it comes to autumn, I always like that writing style that's very, that's just in general. I love these two different writing styles. The whimsical style that's very descriptive and magical and immersive. But I also like the literary, artistic writing, not the kind where you don't not like, James Joyce's writing, like that stream of consciousness, or but that kind of writing that's just as immersive as magical whimsical descriptions, but it's more like literary and academic, like, if that makes sense, but done in a way that's similar to Flowery. It's hard to explain, just there's something about these sentences in a literary work. So that is The Secret History by Donna Tartt. Okay, and then we have Bleak House by Charles Dickens. This is a classic, and going by the title alone, it's perfect for autumn, maybe like even around November time. It's perfect, autumn going into winter reading. Just going by the fact that it's called Bleak House. This is about this court case, Jaundice and Jarndyce, and it's a question of inheritance that has been going on for years. Well, two of the potential inheritors are these cousins, and one of the Jarndyces takes in to raise. He also ends up taking in this young girl who's about the same age, Esther, and she lives with her aunt. What happened to her mother is a bit of a mystery, but all she knows is her mom did something shameful by having her out of wedlock, or something like that. And so he takes her into being a companion to these two kids. And it's her story running parallel to the story of these two cousins, and if they're going to get in this court case. So it's a bit of a sad story, but there's some lighthearted, fun moments. It's about the lives of these characters, and Charles Dickens knew how to create some intriguing, fun, entertaining authentic characters that often seem exaggerated because, some of the things he does. Tristan from Tristan's in the Classics did this really interesting video where he talked about one of the literary devices that Dickens uses, where he heavily focuses on one trait for certain characters to, that makes it almost seem like they're caricatures, but they're really not if you really think about it and understand it. I wish I could remember so I could explain it, but Tristan, it's Tristan in the Classics, and that talks about, I don't remember what he called it, but it's a really interesting video to hear about it. But it's a very dark, atmospheric, very dreary book, but like I said, there's some lighthearted moments. There's a coziness to the story as well. And it's so far been my favorite, and of Dickens' work, next to A Tale of Two Cities. So I definitely want to reread it again soon. I mean, I've already started, but I haven't gotten much read, which is the problem. That's my problem. Is a lot of these books I've been inspired to start over and reread them, but then I put them down because I'm feeling guilty because there's so many of my new books that I haven't read. So yeah, I would I think this is, like I said, I think this would probably be great for around at the end of October going into November. This might be something good, something to read then. But anyway, so that is Bleak House by Charles Dickens. Okay, next. So this is a book. Let me see. Is that? This is one of the books that I read long before I discovered BookTube, long before I knew BookTube existed. And I actually read it around I read it around the times of, it would have been the early days of BookTube, 2013. And that is The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern, her debut novel. And this is about a circus that only comes at nighttime. And it was created by these two magicians who are having their apprentices compete in this competition, compete to the death. And they're using the circus for their competition and in their stage, but their apprentices don't know that they're competing in the competition, or they know they're competing in the competition, but they don't know who their competition is. So they both stumble on them, they both come across and stumble upon the circus, and they end up falling in love, but not realizing that they're each other's competitors. And it's just so whimsical and magical. You can smell the caramel corn and the popcorn and the funnel cake, and it's just so whimsical and fun. You just get lost in this world, and even though, yes, the romance isn't super developed, it's really sweet, and you still kind of root for them. You want it to work, and it has a very fairy tale-esque feel with the circus only coming at night. Being such a mystery, and it has great, wonderful, not just immersive, but great writing. It's just so magical, and let's use the word bewitching. Such a bewitching story, which I also I love her other book, her sophomore novel, The Starless Sea, but that one, a lot of people say it doesn't have as much of a plot, and I can see, why they say that, because I feel like the plot is very loose, but I do feel like there's a plot. This one probably has more of a plot than that one, but there are aspects of it that not everybody loves, but it's just so much fun, and I think it's perfect for this time of year. So that is Erin Morgenstern's The Night Circus. If you have not read it, but maybe you probably have, because I know a lot of people have read this. Next we're back to the classics. So this was the first of the Bronte siblings I ever found, of one of their Bronte siblings' works that I fell in love with, and that is Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. is first this huge. So this is the story of our title character, Jane. Her parents died when she was born. She lives with her aunt and uncle and their kids, but her uncle dies eventually, and the only people that offer her kindness, and her aunt and cousins are bullying her and abuse her. They don't offer her any kindness. They're just very cruel to her, and eventually her aunt, wanting to get rid of her and wanting to control her willful state, her willful spirit, sends her to this special school, a very religious boarding school that's very cruel in their punishments. And her only comfort is that she does make one friend at the school, Helen, but Helen dies. And her only other friend, is one of the teachers that becomes friends with her. But then, as an adult, she ends up becoming a governess for this rich man, Rochester, to, governing his ward, this little French girl that may or may not be his child. And the two fall in love. First off, I love this version because it makes me think of a Tim Burton film. And I have thought about getting the Wuthering Heights version in this edition, but I feel guilty about that. But it's just, first of all, a lot of the story is, takes place in the English countryside, especially on the moors, in this, creepy house that might or might not have a ghost in there. There's a bit of a mystery of that. So it's a very gothic setting. The romance is a gothic romance in the story, and it's just Jane's coming of age and trying to survive and take care of herself, establish her independence, and it's sad at times, but romantic at other times, and it's so, and like I said, even I don't always love Rochester. My feelings about Rochester are very complicated, but I do love Jane and her story, and the setting alone makes it perfect for this time of year. That's Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. Oh, wow, so it would actually be cheaper in Canada. So I'm looking forward to checking that out, to seeing it. Not in Canada, in the UK. It'll be cheaper in the UK. More expensive in Canada, a little less expensive in the US, but cheaper in the UK. Okay, so let me go ahead and talk about another Bronte work. This is Emily Bronte in her novel Wuthering Heights, her only novel. So this is about a very toxic relationship. So again, you have a story within a story. This man has come, is going to be the caretaker or the guardian or something. He's given this house, and he finds out that this house and another house on the moors that were neighbors have a lot of dark history connecting the two houses. And he finds out from a former maid that worked in one of them about Heathcliff and Cathy. So Heathcliff was a Romani boy who was taken in by one of the families in the house, in one of these houses. Ended up having a very powerful connection with Cathy. One of the daughters lives in the neighboring house. But they have a very complicated, messed up, very dysfunctional relationship, and Heathcliff has never been accepted by the rest of her family. She's the only one who accepts him, and they just have this very hostile, complicated, passionate romance between the two of them. But I wouldn't call it necessarily a romance in a good way. Because, and which is kind of the downfall of why a lot of people don't like this book, because of this toxic relationship. Some people, I think it's because, they think it's a romance, and other times people that they know they might know what they're getting, but they don't like it. They were maybe had to read it for school or something, and they just can't stand it because of how toxic the relationship is. But I'm just intrigued by it. Again, it's another one of those situations where you can't help but wanting to read more and watching this train wreck of a couple. Again, we're on the countryside of England on the moors, so it's, it's dark and stormy nights. There might be a possibility of a ghost. So there's a lot of gothic elements to the story. And I think the Brontes, at least Charlotte and Emily, are known for having ghosts in their stories. And it's just like, and it's also very tragic. The story of these Kathy and Heathcliff. So that is Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. Okay, and then we have the first book in a trilogy, and that is A Discovery of Witches by Deborah Harkness. This has been compared to Twilight, as in the romances are the same, or not. I mean, like the romances are similar. You have a mortal and a wit and a vampire falling in love. But what I really like about this one is that Diana Bishop, our female lead, she is a witch, so she can take care of herself. She's not a damsel in distress all the time. She can, she's very capable of rescuing herself. It doesn't need, like, her love interest to always come and save her. So Diana is a witch who she does not practice because her parents were killed, so she blames magic for that, and she fears magic, so she does not practice it. But that is seen as not good by her aunts that have raised her aunt and her aunt's girlfriend who have raised her. And she ends up going away to college, living a normal life, as normal as she can get. And she's at Oxford studying this and writing her dissertation. But while she's in the library doing her research, she comes across this manuscript, Ashmole 782. Looks like an alchemical manuscript that has a little bit of magic. But since she wants something to do with magic, she gets rid of it. But the other magical creatures in this world, which are vampires, witches, and daemons, they discover that she's found this manuscript. So everyone basically starts stalking her and obsessing and following her around and wanting this information, wanting her to call up this manuscript, because supposedly there are some secrets about all the different species, that the history, and none of them wants the other groups to get a hold of this manuscript. Now, another person who was drawn to her in this manuscript was Matthew Claremont, who is a biology professor at the school at Oxford, and he starts following her around as well, and he ends up finding himself being drawn to her and becoming her protector. And so they start spending time together. At first she doesn't trust him, is wary of him because vampires and witches do not mix, and but as they get to know each other, they end up falling in love, which of course is forbidden. But the other problem is that Diana might be more powerful than she realizes. So again, we have a school setting, particularly Oxford of all places, which makes it even cooler. Which I might get to visit Oxford when I go there, when we finally go to London. I mean, I don't know if that's going to cost anything, but we might or might not. It will depend, because this trip has gotten expensive. But I love all the Oxford scenes of her studying at the library, trying to do all this research. I love history, and just like, and the fact it's about witches and vampires. This is the perfect time of year to read about that. It's almost a little cozy but creepy sometimes, and I'm telling you, there's a little bit of an adventure, and there's some magic, so it's a little whimsical, and it has this, and it has the romance. Like, it's not my first, my top priority, but I do like it. I have liked it when I've read it. Romance, so I definitely enjoy it. It's kind of fun to go back to that kind of story every once in a while. Especially because this does, because first of all, Diana is very capable of taking care of herself. She doesn't need to, Matthew to rescue her all the time and protect her, because she's not incapable of doing that. She's very powerful. And some of her powers and what she's capable of doing are really cool. Although I do wonder if sometimes some people think she's too powerful. But although she has trouble controlling it, so maybe that makes up for it. You know, and it is a like there is this like I said, can't remember what I was gonna say. But anyway, that is A Discovering Witches by Deborah Harkness. Okay, so then we have the other book that I had discovered long before book 2. I knew about book 2. And that was The 13th Tale by Diane Setterfield. This was her debut novel. And it is a story of two women. Margaret Lee, she's an amateur biographer, and she discovered she has been contacted by this famous, mysterious author, Vida Winter, who has never, whenever people ask her about her life story, she always lies and tells these mysterious tales about her life. She is known for writing a series of fairy tales, 12 fairy tales, but there is the rumor of a 13th tale. So there's this intrigue about her. Everyone wants to know about. This takes place before social media came into play, like before social media was a thing. So our main character has somehow been contacted by this woman wanting to finally speak the true story of her life. So, Margaret is called to visit her, and she takes down her biography. This, again, it's atmospheric. It's the idea of telling stories and the importance of stories and our own story, our own life story, who we are, it's our identity, and, it's magical and whimsical with a creepy element to it. You know, very dark and tragic story about this woman's life. And it's magical and whimsical, and it just and you just want to cuddle up with a blanket and just open this book and get lost in this story and this tale about this woman, this famous author. And of course, if you're a reader, it's great for people who love reading, because it's all about telling stories. So that is The 13th Tale by Diane Setterfield. Now, I feel like her other work, Bellman and Black, which is in this version, there is an excerpt from that one. Even though I didn't love it, I would recommend it because it also feels like, from what I remember, it feels very autumnal as well. Okay, so that is The 13th Tale. Okay, next, I'm going to talk about the book that I don't have in my possession anymore. I mean, I might still have it. It might be in the pile of books that I'm going to donate eventually. But, Dracula by Bram Stoker. Most of you probably know what this is about. You have Jonathan Harker, who is a lawyer, happily engaged lawyer, but he's sent on a mission to visit this well-known Transylvania count who wants to buy this house in England. So Jonathan Harker is sent to help him deal with that business. And the Count insists he stays there for a long period of time. And he starts noticing some weird things in the castle, and he's already heard some strange rumors about the Count, and he's not sure, he doesn't believe him at first, but then a lot of weird, scary things happen while Jonathan is in the house, in the castle. And he sees a lot of weird things, like the Count climbing walls and transforming. He gets attacked by these vicious vampire girls, and which that scene is very disturbingly memorable. That scene is always that one's creepy to me. That whole scene when he gets attacked by Dracula's girls. Meanwhile, his Jonathan's fiance, Mina, is waiting back home in England, and they're communicating through letters, and she's trying to cope with his absence, and her only comfort is her best friend, Lucy, and I cannot remember Lucy's last name. But then somehow Dracula gets to England and attacks Lucy and starts slowly turning her into a vampire. And Mina, along with Lucy's lovers, and I say lovers as in plural, as in there's, 3 guys who are in love with her, have to save her. Well, and all the while, Jonathan is trying to get back home to his beloved Mina. I gotta say, in this case, I kind of prefer adaptations over this one. And I think that's the problem. Sometimes there's some classics where pop culture has ruined the original book for me because it's not as fun as the adaptations. It ends up being a disappointment. Like Francis Ford Coppola's movie was so much fun, awesome, and weird and creepy, and just I try to watch it every year around this time of year, particularly in October because I participate in Booktober, so I read Victorian literature and then watch spooky movies around this time of year, and but it's although right now I'm kind of focused on rewatching Grimm's. I don't know if I'll get to the movies yet or not, but it's so what's unique about this one is it's told in a epistolary, I never can say that word, epistolary format, basically letter writing, where you're getting the diary entries and letters from all the characters. That's how they tell the story. So it doesn't have as much Dracula in it, even though Dracula is the title character. Like, there's not as much vampire action. At least there's vampire action in the beginning of the book, but the middle, there isn't as much. You're mostly, there's some Renfield, and there's all the Lucy as a vampire and all that, and there's all that stuff. And then there's the big epic battle. That's when, at the end with Dracula. So it was a little disappointing in that sense, but the format is kind of cool. Like, I have very mixed feelings about that format, because sometimes it works for me, sometimes it doesn't. There were some characters that I liked over others, and but it's still, I would still recommend trying it out if you haven't read it, because it's just perfect. It's Dracula. It's the original Dracula story. So it's just, it's the original vampire novel. I mean, well, not the original, because Carmilla, I think, came first before Dracula, which is about a female vampire. And and I definitely want to try I want to try Carmilla at some point. I don't know when though. Maybe I'll get it on my Kindle, because it's kind of cost money. It might be cheaper on there, because I know that the older classics are less expensive on Kindle. So let me go ahead and talk about my next book. Has to do with Dracula, and that is Dacre Stoker and J.D. Barker's Dracul. So, you learn in the author's note of this book that Bram Stoker actually believed in vampires, and that he told his agent that Dracula was a warning to everybody about vampires. But at the time, people were already paranoid, so his agent was like, we don't want to scare people or traumatize them when they're already worried about stuff. They're already paranoid about what's going on in the world, so let's not go there. So he had to take out a lot of stuff and fictionalize the story, which I think is really cool and a little unsettling, a little nerve-wracking to that this man believed in vampires were real, and the idea of vampires being real is terrifying. Like, I know you have books like Twilight and there's a lot of other vampire books that kind of romanticize vampires, and there's Buffy and Angel, but I think in real life, vampires want to be so sexy and romantic. I mean, I know, granted, you can do which, it's, you never know, but still, I mean, it was inspired by the fact that there are crazy people who thought they were vampires and thought that they needed blood to drink blood to survive. But this is kind of a fictionalized version of Bram Stoker and what inspired him to write Dracula. So I don't think the story is actually completely true. I mean, I would have to double check on that, but so we have a young Bram Stoker, who was raised by this nanny that gave him her blood to drink, making his parents assume that she was a vampire, but she did it to save his life. And so she ends up getting fired, and he never sees her again until years later as an adult. He's thinking about her and wants to track her down with his siblings, his brother and sister. But his brother doesn't want anything to do with her, while the sister also wants to know what happened to her and find her. And I think it does a lot of the things. It doesn't have the same format. It's regular prose, but it does some of the things that bothered me about Dracula, it fixes, like the female characters. Although Mina Harker was a little more interesting than I remember when rereading for the second time. But, Bram's sister is so much more intriguing, and I love that it's a female, there's a potential female vampire in the story. It's, again, creepy, unsettling, atmospheric, and just really fun, and I wish I could come up with better words. Wish I had a bigger vocabulary sometimes. But it's so much fun. And the fact that Dr. Stoker, who is a descendant of Bram Stoker, I think really helps sell this book. It makes this book work. Especially because he knows about his relative and his history and stuff like that. So, it's just, and there might even be someone other than and there might be another vampire following them other than the nanny. Then the nanny took care of them. I don't remember her name, but it's just, if you love Dracula, or if you like the adaptations of Dracula, whether you like the original source material or not, I think you would enjoy this story. Like I said, there's a little bit of a theme. Okay, next we have another classic, The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. Now, this year, I plan at some point to read The Canterville Ghost by him, which is a short story. This is the only novel he wrote. The rest of his works are plays or short stories. But, this is about a young man named Dorian Gray. This artist, Basil Heywood, or something. It's so weird how the names pop into my head. And, let me see. I can't see if I got the names right, but, I mean, it'd be funny if I actually got the name right, but, yeah, Basil, he's a famous artist, and he becomes obsessed with Dorian, thinks he's the most beautiful boy he's ever seen, and wants to paint his portrait, and I think it's Henry, who points out, a mutual friend of theirs, points out that Dorian eventually will grow old, the picture will stay the same forever, and he will lose his looks. So Dorian becomes obsessed, and even makes a wish for the portrait to grow old and for him to stay the same forever. And he gets his wish, and it's all about living his life with debauchery, and all the sins, all the bad things he does are reflected in the portrait rather than on his face, on him. Now there is what is interesting about this. First of all, there's a lot of, LGBTQ undertones with this. Because actually Oscar Wilde himself was gay, and I think because of that, I think at the time he got arrested for it or something. I don't remember the history, but he did, he got arrested or something. So, he was outcasted. I wish I could remember. I would need to look up what happened to him. But, so he used his own work to express, those his frustrations and his needs and desires and, you know, his sexuality in his work. So there's definitely a little bit of that with Basil and Henry and Dorian. The writing is just beautiful. I wish that Oscar Wilde had written more books. He is away with words next as much as Jane Austen Dickens do. And he's just, like, it's a really fun and creepy story. You know, it, like I said, it really explores the idea of vanity and how people, like, and what it can do to you, and how, you know, how you should be vain, you know. And there's a little bit of this idea: is Dorian crazy? Is this really happening, or is he just imagining it because the thought has been put in his head? It's also a very tragic story. And now, which, I mean, I have not seen that movie in years, but whenever, I mean, I don't even know if I ever saw the whole movie, but when I read this, I think I've read this twice now. Whenever I read it, I picture, Ben Barnes? I think picture Ben Barnes as Dorian, and Colin Firth as Henry. I don't remember who played Basil, but I would have to look it up. But I would love to see if I can get access to that adaptation, like see if it's on HBO Max or something, or Max. I should say, because it's not HBO Max anymore. But it's so much fun and creepy, and again, I love Oscar Wilde's writing, and I just love it, and I think it's just perfect for this time of year. That's The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. Okay, next we have another classic. So, I was also about for Fahrenheit 451. It's one of the few classics that I had to read for school that I love, that I had, that I actually liked, because some of the classics I read for school I kind of actually enjoyed. Not all of them, unfortunately, but Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451 was one of them. So this is his other work, The Something Wicked This Way Comes. And this is about a mysterious carnival that comes to a small town. And it kind of is similar to the Night Circus. Which, actually, I don't know if someone else has done this. I might have already seen someone do this, but I would love to do, if you like this classic, you would like this modern work, or vice versa. I think that would be if you like this, then you'll like this video. I think that would be really cool. Because originally, I was thinking about doing one where, if you like this book, check out this TV show. Or if you like this TV show, check out this book. But I'm kind of having trouble with that one. So I think I might, like, classic versus modern book might be something I should try. But anyway, it's very similar to the Night Circus, and the fact that you have this traveling carnival, and these people all make deals with the ringmaster. But there is a price to be paid. And these two 13-year-old boys at first are excited about the carnival, but then one of them starts to figure out what's going on. You know, there's something not right with the, ringmaster or master of ceremonies. I can't remember what his name is. And his father, he's trying to talk to his father, who does believe him, which I love that. One of the things I love about this is that the father believes him. The father does not dismiss him. The father doesn't, tell him his own imagination is overactive. He listens to him and gives him advice and helps him out, even if to a lot of people this would seem crazy. I love that. And that it's his friend who kind of gets hypnotized by this carnival. So it's one of those be careful what you wish for stories. It's, like, again, atmospheric. It's perfect for this time of year. It is part of a series, but I think it's one of those ones where you don't have to necessarily read the other books in the series. Like I said, it is a classic. a modern classic, and it's I think even better. I think this is even better than Fahrenheit 451. And I do want to read some of his other works. Like I put some of them. I looked at some of them on Kindle because I would love to, if I can't buy a copy, then I would love to, get it. Maybe I'll get on Kindle. Which Kindle will come in handy for like books that I can't find at the store that are older. I can get them on Kindle. But anyway, so it's whimsical and mysterious. There is an adaptation of it with Jonathan Pryce. I don't know who plays the kids or anything, or the father, but Jonathan Pryce is the only one. He plays the villain, which would be really fun to watch. Because I have seen him play kind of a not nice person. Like he's the father of Elizabeth in Pirates of the Caribbean, so he's a nice character. And is very protective of his daughter. And the only time I've played him where I've seen him play a not so nice person is What a Girl Wants. He's the father of Amanda Bynes' father's. He's the future father-in-law of Amanda Bynes' dad, her biological dad. And if that makes sense. I can't remember all the character names of that movie, but he's in that one. He's not a nice guy in that one, but he's not like a all powerful villain character. He's just a regular selfish, character that's greedy and and is ambitious, wants the best for his daughter, and wants So I would be excited. I would love to see this adaptation, but I have not seen it. I would love for it to come on Max or something. But anyway, or if I wish it would come on I don't know if it's considered Disney or not, because sometimes Disney. But it's so much fun, and I want to read it again. That's the problem. I make these videos and talk about these books, and all of a sudden I want to read them. Oh, and it does, and actually, this one I think takes place in October. I think. Let me see if let me look. Let me just check. I think it does take place in October. Yep. Yeah, it takes place in October. So you gotta read it in October. Although, like I said, I almost want to read it now. Okay, next we have Uprooted by Naomi Novik. So, I know people actually love this one, prefer this one over Spinning Silver, even though Spinning Silver is kind of a Rumpelstiltskin retelling. A very loose one, but, I definitely prefer this one. Surprisingly, I know a lot of people don't love this one, especially because of the romance in this one. It's a little questionable, because of the way the guy treats her, but... So this is a story that takes place in this in this little village. Our main character is Agnieszka. I still don't know if I'm saying her name right. And the girls of her village get summoned by this creature, this entity known as this wizard, known as the dragon, who has been protecting their village from this forest that is on the outskirts of their village. That supposedly is full of evil and it's infected. It's kind of like in Lord of the Rings, you have Mirkwood, where that forest. The forest is sick. I think it's Mirkwood Forest. So that's the same thing with this one. And surprisingly, Agnieszka thinks her best friend is going to get chosen, but it turns out she is the one that gets chosen. And the dragon is also surprised by this, but he takes her to his tower. And she's very fearful of him because there's all these rumors about him that he does something to the girls, or that they never come back home, they never come back to the village. And he tries to, but she finds that he just wants to teach her magic so she can help him protect their village from this forest. But her magic is very different from his. She ends up being able to harness magic, but her magic is a lot more wild and uncontrollable and like a forest, wild like a forest. And his has a lot more control and precision. And he ends up, and then it turns out she ends up being a very valuable protector of the forest. And the prince of the kingdom outside the forest wants her help to do that. But then you find out that her best friend, the girl she thought was going to be chosen by the dragon, she ends up getting caught up and captured and taken over by the forest. So it has it's again a story within a story. It's like a fairy tale story. It has the creepy forest, which I think is perfect for this time of year. And the idea of the forest being evil, having evil and wicked intentions and consuming you and taking you over. And there's magic, and I know that, and it's fun and mysterious, and it's just such a great story. That is Uprooted by Naomi Novak. And then we have a more modern classic, Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. This is my first Daphne du Maurier. The only other one I've read is My Cousin Rachel, which I didn't love, but I do want to reread that one. So again, we have an unnamed narrator, and she's this young woman an American woman who she has been made a companion to this elderly rich lady. And they end up deciding to go. She wants to go to Monte Carlo. I think it's Monte Carlo. I don't know, but oh, I didn't know that. And she ends up, but while they're at this local hotel, there is this guest here, Maxim de Winter, and there's all these rumors about him. His wife died, but there's all these, suspicions about how she died. I think maybe she might have been murdered. And everyone wants to know him and interact with him, including the woman she's companions to. And Maxim notices our narrator and starts spending time with her. He's very intrigued by her, and then the woman ends up, and eventually, when the woman gets sick, our narrator ends up spending a lot more time with her to the point where she falls in love with him. And they have this beautiful whirlwind romance, and then when the woman is like, we're gonna leave, I'm ready to go, our main character begs, is upset about it, and Maxim asks her to marry him. And she agrees. And she ends up being taken to his home in England, where she meets Miss Danvers and the rest of the staff, who are obsessed and in love with Miss De Winter, Maxim's first wife. And especially Miss Danvers, who's constantly, compares our narrator to Rebecca, and reminds her of how she'll never be as good as Rebecca. So our main character ends up becoming obsessed with her herself and tries to be like Rebecca. And it's very unsettling and unnerving. You just feel so bad for our main character. You just constantly are worried what's going to happen to her. Is she in danger? And Miss Danvers' relationship with Rebecca is weird and creepy. And it's just and Maxim is not very much not helping the situation. And I feel like this has been is an homage to Jane Eyre. Again, it's so it's so weird. I like, even though it can be confusing, I kind of like when the author, it's kind of interesting when authors don't give the main characters a name, their first name. There's always a reason why they're not named. In the Historian, there's definitely a reason why our main character doesn't get a name. But while it's a different reason from this one, it's almost like she's trying to become Rebecca, so she's not as important as a Rebecca to even, and like that's why the narrator doesn't give why she doesn't have a name, because she can't compare to the title character. And her relationship with Maxim is so interesting and like worth discussing. I mean, I love just a book club to discuss this book, but again, like it's really, again, it's just the fact that there's a bit of a mystery. Again, it feels perfect for this time of year. Like, I think mysteries are definitely the perfect books for this time of year. 4 more books to go. Okay, next. We're finally getting to the ultimate haunted house story and the inspiration for Stephen King's screenplay, Rose Red. This is The Haunting of Hill House, and as I said in a previous video when I mentioned this book, when I did, it was I think a 7 on Sunday when I talked about this book. I think short recommendations video, 7 short recommendations. I think this book has had a resurgence, especially because there was this adaptation on Netflix that was inspired by this. I think Bly Manor, or I don't know if that's if that's a book, but this is the ultimate haunted house story. So you have this professor who's doing a sleep study, at least that's what he claims. And he decides to rent out this supposedly haunted house. And one of our main characters is this woman who, she's got a lot of issues. And she's kind of been bullied by her sister and brother-in-law. She is forced to live with them, and she's taken advantage, and she's just very quiet and kind of, very shy, and she ends up participating in this study with like 2 or 3 other people. And she, after hearing about this haunted house that they're staying in, she starts to form a connection with the house, and the house might be speaking to her, and it starts messing with her head. And the thing is, you don't know if she's really experiencing this, if the house is really haunted, or if she's just crazy. And it's just so like I love psychological stories where, like, again, you don't know if the person's just crazy. Although I'm going for, I always like to find that they're not crazy. That, yeah, everyone else thinks they're crazy, but then you realize that as the reader that they're not. Like, and hopefully their characters find that out too. It's, like I said, the ultimate haunted house story. And it's so much fun. It's not super long, and it just really packs a punch as far as haunted house stories go for being short. So that is The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. So I'm trying to not use the same words, as I don't know if you noticed, because I so wanted to use some of those words again for that one, because it's, really does describe that book, those words, but I was trying not to. Next, speaking of Stephen King, next we have his vampire book, his take on Dracula, where the tagline is Dracula in Suburbia. This is Salem's Lot, and so our main character, Ben Mears, is a writer, an author, and he lived in this town called Jerusalem's Lot in Maine, and he has not been back there in years, and is writing a book about an experience when he was a little boy, when he went into the infamous Marston house, which had a lot of bad shit happening there, and it's supposedly haunted by the ghost of the original owners. And he had this creepy experience where he saw something that scared him, that terrified him, and he ran away. Well, years later, as an adult, he wants to write about the experience in novel format, so he decides to go back to Jerusalem's Lot and write that story. But it turns out that there might be a vampire might have bought the Marston house and might be living in Jerusalem's Lot and slowly turning all the residents into vampires. Again, it's a vampire book. I mean, in fact, I think it does the vampire thing better than the original book did. which I think because of Dracula being Bram Stoker being like, oh, this is about vampires and it's a warning to people and that maybe they're real, maybe all that good stuff was taken out and slowed down a little bit, toned down, and then this one does a better job at it and is able to do what Bram Stoker couldn't do because he was trying to traumatize people. You were already scared. So it's fun and like it does such a great job. Like I think you would get more vampire action in this book. And it's not, and don't worry, it's not like the Cullens where they're all softies and vegetarians. It's actually the vampires are dangerous and will kill you and turn you into a vampire. There's a little bit of romance. And once again, it does what Stephen King always does best, was just creating not just creepy atmosphere, but also great characters that feel authentic and real and relatable, and you really get to know them, the good and the bad, and really you just feel for these characters and are terrified for them and worry, oh my god, are they going to get turned into vampires? Are they going to survive? Are they going to get killed? Will they escape? And it's so much fun, and I think a lot of people who are fans of vampires will probably love this book if you have not read it. Okay, 2 more books to go. Next is a book I actually read at the beginning of last year. That is Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. It's his debut, I believe, and he just recently wrote a prequel to this one. So this one is kind of like, has a similar feel to the Hallmark movies, the cozy aspects, not the Christian, overly moral aspects, but it has more of the, like, just the coziness and small town vibes. So you have our main character, Viv, who was an orc, who's decided to walk away from her violent life of, hunting people and killing and all that, and wants to open up a coffee shop. But the village where she settles, they don't know anything about coffee. And so she has to start from the ground up. And she is all about her building her coffee shop. So in slowly just starting this business and forming friendships, it's very low stakes. The only thing she has to worry about is tax collectors and an old acquaintance of hers, suspicious of how she started the shop and why she's so successful now. There is a little bit of romance, but I feel like the romance takes a back seat. It explores the idea of people's false conceptions of you and presumptions about who you are, and how maybe you're not as monstrous as people think you are, that you are actually, you're not different from everyone. You have your desires and you have a personality and so it's very fun and lighthearted and cozy, like I said, very low stakes. So if you want a fantasy but you don't want the big epic battles and chosen one stories and epic romances that are always end in tragedy or take forever for the people to be happy, or you might want to try this because it has a lot of family fantasy elements, but is a very simple plot. Like I said, low stakes, but just really fun. And there is romance, but it's not like heavy romance, and it's not dramatic romance. It's not like doomed romance. And it's just it's a fun read. It's a fast read, and like I said, it's like reading a rom-com romance novel, but with fantasy elements. So, the coffee shop setting, that always makes me think of fall, like Starbucks, like being in a Starbucks or being in a independent coffee shop that's not a chain coffee shop. Okay, the last one of my favorite classics, and that is Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, and I would love this is the 200th anniversary edition. And I have this biography, this nonfiction work on Mary Shelley, In Search of Mary Shelley, I think it's called, that I want to read this year. But this is the story with great illustrations. It's like a picture book, little kids picture book. It's just and I would love to read it this year, and like it's just, and and this is another one that does an interesting thing with its format. And this also is one where there's multiple editions. There's 2 versions of it. I don't know what this version is. But it has such beautiful illustrations and sketches and stuff like that, you know. But anyway, this, in case you don't know, this is the story of Victor, and he is a scientist and I think he's a college student, who decides to create life using dead body parts. And it does not go well because he ends up rejecting and being horrified by his creation. But his creation has a life of its own now and wants companionship and its intelligence and wants to learn about the world around it. And he is a very tragic figure, and it's the question of who is the true villain. Like, the creature looks like the monster, but he's maybe not the monster after all. And then while you have Victor, who has messed with life and death and has created this monster and ends up abandoning it. You know, the only problem with this, I mean, I love this edition, but the only problem is it's hard to take it places because it's, oh crap. It's hard to take it with me places because it's big, physically big, but so it's hard to travel with it. But yeah, and I mean, it's just, I love these illustrations. I'm in love with this edition. I'm so glad I bought it, even though I can't really take it with me, travel it. But it's actually the publishers of this edition is Sweetwater Press, which is, I think they're the same, connected with the Arcturus editions, which I think those are only sold in the States and maybe possibly Canada. But it's, again, creepy story and just the idea of messing with life and death and it's just so, like, such a dark story, and perfect for this time of year to read, and I might read it for October, even though I've already read it. So that is Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. So those are all the books that I have read. Not all of them. I mean, there's probably at least a few others that I've read that would be great for fall, or for autumn. I have some of them I might just not have. Like I try to stick with books that I have, and now I did put Legends and Lattes in the donation pile because I'm like, as much as I enjoyed it, it's like, am I gonna read it again? So maybe someone else might enjoy it at the roast office or something. But anyway, so like I said, those are my autumn recommendations. So do you have any books you would recommend for autumn? I would love to hear about them in the comments below. And if you like this video, be sure to click subscribe and give this video a thumbs up. And if you want to, you can click the bell notification button if you want to be notified about my latest videos. I hope you're enjoying your reading. If you read any specific books around this time of year, I would love to hear about them. Are you a horror reader? Are you a more whimsical, cozy reader? Please let me know. I really would love to know what you like to read this time of year. Or maybe you just read whatever. You're not a seasonal reader. I mean, I'm not really a seasonal reader, but lately I have gotten more into reading certain books around this time of year. Like, I think I'm getting more and more into seasonal reading. But the problem is there are some books I want to read all the time that might not fit the season. Anyway, so I'm gonna go and I will talk to you all later. Alright, bye.